according to my mother, my great-granddad, James Kelly, was color struck. And he would always say that he didn't want no one darker than him because he was black and Irish. And therefore he was kind of light, like Brother Malcolm X, because Brother Malcolm X was black and Irish. That's why he was as light as he was, because in spite of him saying that his mother's mother was raped by a white man who was Irish, and from his mother produced him, the reason why Brother Malcolm was as light as he was and his red hair, it came from that. So whether he held a hatred of what happened to his mother, which was rightfully so, he still was black and Irish, just like Brother Jesse Jackson, rest in peace. But James Kelly Sr. used to always talk that he didn't like dark-skinned people, and he didn't want no one darker than him. And so my mother, hearing that, she goes to church one morning and she sees my very high yellow dad. Okay, whose great-grandfather was white and Indian mixed. So due to the fact that she come up under a man who was color struck, of course she wanted to please him, but she was still under the influence of him being color struck. So her and my dad get together and they produce me and my sister. And so my dad has always, the movie Soldier Story, that sergeant, that bright-skinned brother, the way he treated Denzel's and them character in those movies was a reflection of how he always treated me coming up. That's why I can't watch that movie, Soldier Story, because that character reminds me too much of my dad. And the movie Fences, I can't watch the movie Fences because Denzel's character reminds me of my father. But due to the fact that James Kelly Sr. was color struck, that is what provoked my mother's interest in my dad. So of course, when it comes, if that's the root of a lot of things, nothing good is going to come out of that. Nothing. When we as black men allow the causes and the effects of our environment to cause us not to love and respect one another, and cause and effect, it put black women under the influence of no longer having the will to love us as black men. My point is, we need to take responsibility of how black women are made to feel today. We need to take responsibility for that, because we as black men have created this animosity in between us as black men to the degree to where we've lost love and respect for one another. My whole intention of going down to the Nation of Islam was to try to understand black men and therefore try to continue my love for black men. But even down at the Nation of Islam, I wasn't able to even accomplish that because I had black men down there acting towards me like they didn't love me. And so that goes back to what Brother Malcolm has said when he said that the Nation of Islam is the greatest organization for black people in America, but niggas messed it up. And if you look at his words, that's exactly how black women see us today. They don't see us as black men. They see us as niggas. That's how they see us. They address black men as niggas today. And they're not, the only time that they say, well, I love my black men is when they're put on the spot. When asked, do you love black men? They're so concerned about how the rest of the world is going to look at them and think of them if they are honest. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I love my brothers because I don't. I'm not going to pretend like I love my black women because I don't. I don't. And I understand exactly why I don't. Because believe me, I've tried through the years to love our community, but it seems like our community hates one another and they hate themselves, and their actions throughout the world has shown the entire world that we don't love ourselves, and so we put ourselves in the position to where it is impossible for us to love one another. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of our black women are going in the other direction, because they see that we have gone in the other direction when it comes to loving one another and respecting one another. So this is much deeper than what that moron Umar Johnson talks about when he said, I want to apologize on the behalf of black men. No, you can't apologize on behalf of the entire community because you really don't know what the problem is. The problem is we have lost love and respect for one another, and therefore our black women has lost love and respect for ourselves. And in effects of environment, black men have lost love and respect towards black women because black women have lost love and respect for themselves. So our community is currently in a mess. And if you ask me, it's looking like its ship has sailed. I'm just being real with you. And I'm not alone in this analysis. A lot of us feel as though that ship has sailed. We have become irredeemable. And as long as we are not totally honest with ourselves of what the problem is, we are going to remain irredeemable. To me, from my vantage point, I think the only way that this community, mind you, the black community, is going to be irredeemable, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to acknowledge that we don't love ourselves. We have to acknowledge that we don't love one another. Acknowledge that. And once you acknowledge that, don't stay there. You have to have a love and a will to come to love one another again. And it has to be done in action and not just words. Like I was telling you, I saw back in the 70s when I used to see black men walk towards each other if they wasn't doing a handshake, like my Uncle Kevin had explained to me, because I told him what I asked him, I said, what's the importance of the whole brother handshake? He said, it's our way of not only showing love, but we show love in a way to where we don't feel uncomfortable making physical contact, shaking each other's hand, and so brother number one, and then you keep walking. And what's beautiful about that is that you show love, that type of love, and you walk away without asking one another, what's your name, brother? What's your name? Because it doesn't matter what his name was. He was black. He's a black brother like you, living in the same environment, going through pretty much, if not the same thing, very similar things, because we're up under the same system, and therefore we're up under the same environment. So we have to get back to loving one another as black men, respecting one another as black men, to become brothers in fact. The same thing needs to happen with black women. I want to further address the color struck thing that I was talking about in my previous video. I like this background. It's the first time I ever used this background. A lot of you are always trying to criticize me. Oh, you got all them backgrounds, You guys are far more too concerned about what is actually irrelevant. Okay, because I'm going to make my videos however the hell I want to make them. Okay? However I want to make them. So you can just rest your mind from that, because I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Okay? But with that being said, the whole color struck issue that my great-grandfather, James Kelly Sr., had has been going on in the black communities for a very long time. I mean, you can even see it in the entertainment field. If you look at it, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will's dark-skinned best friend was always being thrown out of the house. There's a movie that some of you may be familiar with called Sprung, a very, very funny movie. It had the sister in there who was Craig's girlfriend in the movie Fridays, and the other brother who I wish he would do more work. He was in Poetic Justice, and he was Tupac's character's best friend. Those two were in that movie, and they were hilarious. However, the other couple, who both were light-skinned, they were so innocent and they were so sane, you might as well say. So they made the lighter-skinned people in that movie Sprung a little bit more loving and a little bit more serious than the darker skinned, couple that I just mentioned. Those two they worked great together, and I was hoping that more of us would see that, and I was hoping that the entertainment field will see how those two actors, I'm sorry, I don't remember what their name was, but if you check out the movie, it's called Sprung. It had the sister from Fridays in it, and it had the brother from Poetic Justice in it. I think those two were hilarious. They were hilarious. And I was hoping that I would see more movies made with those two collaborating together. I think those two made a great team. But the whole color struck issue has been going on for a very long time in the black community. I mean, even women were saying, I want to get with a white man because I want to have pretty babies. As though a black woman can't breed with a black man and have pretty babies. And that was actually Jenae's intention as well, because that was in her dialogue. That was in her dialogue. So, this whole color struck issue, I saw a lot in my community when I was coming up in Chatham Village, because a whole lot of us were mixed, and the children that were not considered biracial had this attitude towards us because we were of a lighter complexion. And so that gives way to people falling under the spell that darker skinned people are more cynical and evil than lighter skinned people. And then you have this thing that black women fail to realize they fell for, even when they were very little children, when they were taught that Jesus was white. And so when black women fall under that spell and euphoria that Jesus was white, when they see white men, they associate white men with righteousness and safety and all of those things. They fall under the spell of those type of things. And due to the fact that they created this mythical image called the devil, and they painted him red, and therefore they colored him red, which anything colored is considered evil, and the devil, they view black men as the devil. However, as we all know, according to historical accounts, whether it be America, whether it be Asian history, and whether it be European history, because I was over in England, London, England, for 4.5 months, and I went up in Oxford University, and I went all through their library. And I read books over there in London, England, very carefully, and these books were more than 300 years old. Now, let me tell you something about American history in comparison to Great Britain history. Over here in America, if you read white history has been greatly arranged and watered down, just so those historical accounts will be able to be placed in the education of the common child, to where that information will be reduced to what they call required reading, to where teachers can legally teach these historical accounts to children, with them saying that this is American history. You know, all this George Washington crap. George Washington, I cannot tell a lie that I chopped down the cherry tree. Who gives a damn? Now, over in Great Britain, I sat down and I read some books in Oxford University. And you think the whites over here in America were bad? You have no idea of the bloodshed that the Brits have shedded all over the Middle East. It was actually them that carved up the Middle East. They carved it up and saying, this is Africa, this is of thus and so, this is England, this is New England, this is India, and this is New Delhi, India. They carved it up. Or when you separate regions like that, and you say north, south, east, and west, I don't think people understand the profound effects that north, south, east, and west will have on a particular community if all of the communities on the earth. See, because when this information is given to whatever area, it separates people, even intellectually and mentally. This is why we have this west side, east side, west side stuff goes on. And within separation, you have conflict. North Korea, South Korea, North America, South America, west side, east side. It's always that way. But the Britons, they have some of the bloodiest historical accounts that you will ever sit up and read. I mean, I literally went back to my hotel room every day, sick to my stomach. And it's amazing because they allow this information to be out so that people can investigate it. They put it out. They put it right there in their libraries. They have no shame at all. See, shame to the Brit is equivalent to pride. In spite of the blood that was shed through Great Britain of all of the different regions that they invaded and they killed, they pride themselves on that. That's why they call it Great Britain. When their historical accounts, if you read them closely and attentively, there's nothing great about Great Britain. There's really nothing great about it. They have a very, very disgusting and bloody history. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people overseas had problems with the Queen when she would take pictures with all of this jewelry on and these rubies and these diamonds. And everybody was saying the way that they had accumulated all of those materials, the diamonds and the rubies and everything that she was wearing, was by way of bloodshed and tyranny. That's why I said that Brit is a whole nother case. Now, what you're dealing with over here in America in terms of color struck, and I'm only addressing this because of an email that was sent to me by this very nice and intelligent sister. When I think this should be addressed anyway. But when I was talking about how my great granddad was color struck, and he had said that he didn't want anyone darker than him. So with that message being put out there, and he's saying that around the people in his environment, that's no different than a white man telling his children, don't bring no niggas over here in my house. Now, whether you try to compare it as him being prejudiced and my great granddad being color struck, there's really no difference, because you're still dealing with racism. You're still dealing with it. And one of the reasons why I was saying that when he imbued that evil doctrine in the mind of my mother, it formed a preference inside of her. And so when she went to church and she saw my dad, who could be compared to the singer Prince, in his younger days, she saw him as attractive. And so they started talking, and they eventually got together. And through her being color struck, because of my great grandfather being color struck, I was born and was given a dad who ain't about shit. One of the worst human beings I've ever met in my life. This is one of the reasons why I was saying nothing good is going to come from a root that is that contaminated. Nothing good can come from that. It's the root. If the root is contaminated, the fruit is going to be contaminated. And before my mother passed, I had a conversation with her about that. When she gave me this information, this was of the same conversation. And when she was telling me about what my great grandfather told her, I told her, so this is all making sense now. She said, why did you say that? I said, because this explains Daddy's attitude towards me. Because if you see my father, he looks like a European black man. And what I mean by that, he's got white skin, but black features. When he was young, he favored Prince a whole lot. But when he got older, I would compare him to the guy who was in Soldier Story, who was the evil sergeant, or even Duke Ellington. My dad he looks a lot like Duke Ellington, you know. But you see that a whole lot in our community. And so I think that Ashlee fell under the influence of her mother being color struck and racist towards black men. And I believe her mother was telling her, well, you know, black men ain't no good and blah, blah, blah. You need to get you a white man. Now she's telling her black daughter this while her black father still lives. And that explains one of the reasons why the marriage didn't work. And if it's one thing that I don't know if a lot of you noticed, but when her mother and her white husband was in the same interview with her black father and his black wife, if you look at the state of the father, Ashlee's father, I'm not saying he didn't care, but it seemed like he was handling her death and everything a whole lot more better and sufficient than her mother was. Even though her father is the one who ended up going to Washington to get her body out of Africa. I mean, that's a father. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do that anyway. But what I'm saying is, it seemed like that he was handling her death a lot more better than her mother was. And that made me think, well, if Ashlee is feeling like this, how does she feel about her own father? And if she's being programmed this way, was her and her father estranged at the time of her death? And when you are estranged from somebody, it makes it easier during the time of their death to be able to deal with it. As cold as that may sound, that is just a fact. That's just a fact. So it made me wonder, was her and her father getting along well when this happened? And due to the fact that this whole color struck, white Jesus and all of that stuff have programmed so many of our black women to go towards white men. This thing that a lot of people are saying about Ashlee being naive, and she going right into this, asserting that nothing was going to happen to her, and I'm in the right place at this time in my life. To me, I call that the white Jesus effect. Because according to her language, white men can do no wrong. When if she would study American history and even go over there to Great Britain, wrong is all that they've done in order to be where they are this day. And we as black men have always been taught to do the right thing in order for us to progress. When a whole lot of us, due to the fact that we haven't had it so great in this country for generations, a lot of us have found it very difficult to rely on doing the right thing in order for us to progress. And that's not saying that I'm trying to encourage people to do the wrong thing in order to progress. I'm just telling you the cause and effects of how a whole lot of us black men were programmed as we were coming up over here in America. It just seems like doing the right thing a lot of times don't get you nowhere. And it seems like when you start doing the wrong thing, it seems like you progress. Here it is, Jay-Z was a drug dealer at 1996, and just a few years after he used to sell drugs, you see where he's at now. A lot of these rappers used to sell drugs, and they are on top of the world right now. And black women love these men. But brothers who try to do the right thing and try to live righteously, we catch the opposite. But I believe that Ashlee thought that she was with a righteous man, and she felt like she was safe because she was under that white Jesus spell and effect. And he's up on the whole crypto thing, and he had a whole lot of money. And when she put the video up of her feeding the giraffes and this white lion walking in front of them, which the lion is supposed to be the king of the jungle, and it was a white lion. If any of you think that those videos were real and wasn't Al, you need to check yourself. Because that wasn't real at all. Just the same as she wasn't a real person. Everything about this woman was fabricated. And this is the reason why this case is so difficult to understand, because what you were looking at was fake. And a lot of people saying, oh, she was getting ready to get married, and she was over here in Africa, and she was feeding the giraffes, and she was getting proposed, and fake. It was all fake. This is one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense to a whole lot of people. It was all fake. That's why after the video was finished, they said that they were arguing from beginning to the end. Okay, well, when this video was produced, what part of the beginning and the end was that? What part of it? A lot of you were deceived. A lot of you have been tricked. That's one of the reasons why a whole lot of this is not making sense. Some of her posts were saying, suicide is not the answer. Oh, why would she kill herself when she wrote this? How do you know that she wasn't talking about herself and her struggles with taking her own life? Maybe she had suicidal thoughts. And at time, at a certain point, she came to realize that suicide is not the answer. Maybe she was struggling through a very deep depression at the time, and something transpired in her life that made her feel better and think back on her previous thoughts of suicide, and this is where the post come from. You ever thought about that? Come on, y'all, wake up. Wake up. Then they say, well, she was so happy. She was so happy. Let me tell you something. Something that you may find difficult to believe or even understand. A lot of people who decide to kill themselves are in great states of bliss before they actually commit the act. My words were, people who decide to take their own lives are in a great state of happiness and bliss before they commit the act. They go around, they're joking and laughing with everybody, and they shaking people, they hugging, or they do whatever they do, and then all of a sudden they go back to their personal residence and they take themselves out. The key word is decide. They go through a deep period of depression. They don't know what to do. They feel as though they can't talk to anyone. They're in darkness. No one is there to talk them out of it. No one is there to talk to them, to encourage and to convince them that things are going to get better for them. And when they don't have people in their lives like that, they are left with their own thoughts. They're left with their own decisions. And when they come to their conclusion, they say, you know what? I've made up my mind. I'm just going to take myself out. So what I'm going to do is go around and I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. The joy and the bliss comes from the decision, and therefore the peace of mind that they have made up inside of themselves to take themselves out, to end all of the pain. And I've talked to enough people to know that this is a fact. If you're living and you're in conflict and you can't make up your mind on what to do, and by us being irresponsible human beings, not making ourselves accessible in order to those people to feel as though that they can pick up the phone or come to our homes to talk to us and to put everything that they're thinking and feeling on the table, hoping that you have the answers to prevent them from committing an act that they really don't want to commit. In the Bible, it talks about Yeshua going into a place. It was a dark valley, and they said this valley was in darkness. It doesn't mean that it was dark and he couldn't see anything. The valley, which means the people who occupied this particular area of the earth were in darkness. They were in confusion. They were in conflict. They were in misery. And when he walked into that valley, he was a beacon of light, which implies he recognized that the people were in darkness, and these people recognized him as the anointed savior, whether they believed it or not at the time. He counseled the people. He counseled them, and he gave them clarity. And when he left, the valley was no longer in darkness because he gave everyone clarity. So, the lesson in that example, when he says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, is you have to make yourself accessible to the human family, because there's a lot of us walking around right now who are in a lot of pain, who are thinking of taking our own lives. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that I haven't been there. I've been there. I've been there plenty times. Considering my having to deal with two parents who didn't give a damn, who didn't care, and had a sister that was always manipulating environments to where things around me started crumbling. And then you leave, you build your own family, and you end up getting with a woman who is just downright evil, promiscuous, and just don't give a damn about nobody, including herself. I know what that's like. And that will make a person say, if this is my life, here, God, you can have that back. I don't want it. And the best way that you can give your life back is by what? Taking yourself out. But you have to continue to move forward. And I'm not one of those men who use the term, you have to hang in there. Because that came from a story in Savannah, Georgia, when a friend came upon his best friend who was hanging from a tree. And it came from him telling his friend to hang in there, man, hold on. That's where that comes from. That's just like a whole lot of black women walk around here who are dark skinned talking about, well, you know, the darker the cherry, the sweeter the juice. Always ask them, do you know where that came from? That came from when the white men used to sit up in the bar while their white women were at home sleeping, and how they used to joke and laugh about how they used to deflower dark-skinned little girls. And they used to say, yeah, man, what you need to do, you need to get you one of them real dark gals. Because, you know, the darker they are, the sweeter they are. That's where that comes from. So before you open up your mouth and start talking these outrageous platitudes, you need to come to understand exactly where they derive from. I'm sorry, I had to pause. I have some young men who come down here. They come to my door a whole lot. Some young Mormons. And they always like sitting up talking to me, asking me questions. And so I just had to tell them that I was busy. Okay, I want to continue back on the subject, and I'm hoping that I can remember where I was, but I probably concluded on my last thoughts. So with that being said, I just want to move forward. I believe that Ashlee Jenae fell under the influence of her mother's lifestyle, and I believe that her mother had told her, you need to leave them black men alone and get you a white man. And so that's what Ashlee did. However, there's some footage. I don't really think Ashlee's mother really knew her. There's some footage of her and Kevin Gates, who was a very light-skinned brother. They were walking together and they were hugged up. And if you listen to Brother Kevin Gates' words, he called her Chocolate Easter Bunny. And so, Chocolate Easter Bunny? So are y'all sleeping together? I mean, that was implied by him calling her a chocolate Easter Bunny. And we all know what we used to do with chocolate Easter bunnies. We used to eat them. So he walks her, and he also mentioned that she was toxic. Why would he assert that she was toxic? And as they were walking up, she had her Lamborghini, and he had told everyone, this is her car, this is her Lamborghini. And so he was helping her promote herself, you know, this so-called high class individual. She drives a Lamborghini. There's even a picture of her sitting in her passenger seat in her Lamborghini, and you can see the Lamborghini symbol in the back. So I bring all of this up because this girl who was programmed to go towards black men according to her mother's intention, she didn't really care. All she wanted to do was spend time with either white men or black men who had money. She was all about money. And so, as the Bible says, and a whole lot of people misquote, I hear a lot of people say money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of it, the worship of it, is the root of all evil. It's telling you that love that you have for money is evil, which is a seed. And therefore, when it bears fruit in terms of the experience, it's not going to be anything good because the seed is contaminated. So nothing good is going to come from your love of money because the root of it, which is the seed planted, is evil. So nothing's good is going to come from it. So Ashlee Jenae, when it comes to her mother and her love for money, and you look at the results and you wonder why this transpired. Now you can blame this man all you want to, and maybe he did take her life. But it is a strong possibility that she took her own life because everything that she was promoting on her Instagram went in opposition to what was really going on, because they said that they were arguing from the beginning all the way to the end. However, on her Instagram, what she was propagating was that she found her white prince and she's over there in the motherland, okay, where our ancestors were, promoting this, her love for this white man and her love for white men in terms of the white lion that is walking in front of them, and everybody's not paying no attention. And when they stopped and they, did the proposal thing, if you look at the white lion, the white lion was still walking. However, the distance didn't change. You've been deceived. You've been hoodwinked, like Brother Malcolm says. So, with that being said, when everything hit the fan, and which went in opposition of what she put up on her Instagram, she calls her mother. Oh, we got into an argument, they had to separate us, and blah, 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 blah. She's talking to the person who encouraged her to go in that particular direction because of the color of his skin. Did you take the time to get to know this man? Did you introduce him to your parents? Did you introduce him to your mother? No, he was white. So she went for it, and she had nothing but bad things to say about us black men. But you tell me one black man that would have took her to the motherland and would have killed her. Not one. Not one at all. Me and my fiance, Bianca, who is South African, we're going to get married in a few months over there in Natal, where Shaka Zulu was born, because Bianca is Zulu. Okay? Now she had the nerve to go to the motherland with this man without considering or even bothering to study the history of what went down over there. And you show up with this man, celebrating him. Nothing good is going to come from that. You know, now people may say, are you mocking her? I'm pointing some things out. I really can't mock her because maybe she didn't do her studying. The same way she didn't do her research when it came to this man. All she cared about was money. That's why she was all hugged up with Kevin Gates, because all she cared about was money, whether you was black or white. Like Brother Michael Jackson says, I'm gonna take that out of context for a second. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. With her, if you had money, she was game for it. So her love of money sprouted an evil that she wasn't able to escape. Am I mocking her? I'm just telling it like it is. That's all I'm doing. I'm telling it like it is. So, this whole thing being color struck is equivalent to being racist. Whether that was my great grandfather or not, it was because of him being color struck and therefore racist is one of the reasons why I ended up with the no good father that I had to experience. All of that was rooted in someone else's racism. And I told my mother that. I said, that's where your bullshit came from. I said, so this is how I ended up with this bastard as a father, because you listened to this racist motherfucker. You listened to him. And he programmed you to seek out light-skinned men. And when she saw my father, she ran right to him. So this is where all of this comes from. It comes from the so-called elders, and I say so-called elders, because when you an elder, you don't talk like that. Now, old people, old folks who are racist, they talk like that. But elders are people with wisdom who give divine guidance. Those are elders. The rest of y'all is just a bunch of old folks sitting up with all that madness in you, giving out destructive information, which will only be self-destructive to the person who takes in that information. Now, in terms of us as black men, I don't want none of you brothers to feel bad about all of the stuff that she was saying about us. Because you see what happened. Her mother is really the person who got her killed. It was her mother. It was the teachings that she taught her daughter, and she encouraged them. And as I said before, if you look at her father, her black father, I'm not saying he wasn't bothered or hurt by her death, but he seemed to be handling her death a whole lot more effective than the mother was. And I wonder why. Was she estranged from her father? Because considering the dialogue that came from her father was simply behind what happened to her. That's why he looked at more concerned than hurt. But the mother was hurt because she was shocked. Because she encouraged this. She helped encourage this. So believe me, if you look at the footage, you look at the body language, she feels a whole lot more worse about what happened to their daughter than he does. So, you keep your head up, brothers, and let us work on ourselves that we may be able to be brothers to one another again. Let's stop the violent thoughts, the violent attitudes towards one another. This always this urge to resort to violence towards one another. And when we fight, how about fighting against having to fight one another? here when it comes to I believe that Ashlee thought that she was with a righteous man, and she felt like she was safe because she was under that white Jesus spell and effect. And he's up on the whole crypto thing, and he had a whole lot of money. And when she put the video up of her feeding the giraffes and this white lion walking in front of them, which the lion is supposed to be the king of the jungle, and it was a white lion. If any of you think that those videos were real and wasn't out, you need to check yourself, because that wasn't real at all. Just the same as she wasn't a real person. Everything about this woman was fabricated. And this is the reason why this case is so difficult to understand, because what you were looking at was fake. And a lot of people saying, oh, she was getting ready to get married, and she was over here in Africa, and she was feeding the giraffes, and she was getting proposed, and no, fake. It was all fake. This is one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense to a whole lot of people. It was all fake. That's why after the video was finished, they said that they were arguing from beginning to the end. Okay, well, when this video was produced, what part of the beginning and the end was that? Some of her posts were saying, suicide is not the answer. Oh, she's why would she kill herself when she wrote this? How do you know that she wasn't talking about herself and her struggles with taking her own life? Maybe she had suicidal thoughts. And at time, at a certain point, she came to realize that suicide is not the answer. Maybe she was struggling through a very deep depression at the time, and something transpired in her life that made her feel better and think back on her previous thoughts of suicide, and this is where the posts come from. You ever thought about that? Come on, y'all, wake up. Wake up. Then they say, well, she was so happy. She was so happy. Let me tell you something. Something that you may find difficult to believe or even understand. A lot of people who decide to kill themselves are in great states of bliss before they actually commit the act. My words were, people who decide to take their own lives are in a great state of happiness and bliss before they commit the act. They go around, they're joking and laughing with everybody, and they shaking people, they hugging, or they do whatever they do, and then all of a sudden they go back to their personal residence and they take themselves out. The key word is decide. They go through a deep period of depression. They don't know what to do. They feel as though they can't talk to anyone. They're in darkness. No one is there to talk them out of it. No one is there to talk to them, to encourage and to convince them that things are going to get better for them. And when they don't have people in their lives like that, they are left with their own thoughts. They're left with their own decisions. And when they come to their conclusion, they say, you know what? I've made up my mind. I'm just going to take myself out. So what I'm going to do is go around and I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. The joy and the bliss come from the decision, and therefore the peace of mind that they have made up inside of themselves to take themselves out to end all of the pain. And I've talked to enough people to know that this is a fact. If you're living and you're in conflict and you can't make up your mind on what to do, and by us being irresponsible human beings, not making ourselves accessible in order to those people to feel as though that they can pick up the phone or come to our homes to talk to us and to put everything that they're thinking and feeling on the table, hoping that you have the answers to prevent them from committing an act that they really don't want to commit. In the Bible, it talks about Yeshua going into a place, it was a dark valley. And they said this valley was in darkness. It doesn't mean that it was dark and he couldn't see anything. The valley, which means the people who occupied this particular area of the earth were in darkness. They were in confusion. They were in conflict. They were in misery. And when he walked into that valley, he was a beacon of light, which implies he recognized that the people were in darkness, and these people recognized him as the anointed Savior, whether they believed it or not at the time. He counsels the people. He counsels them, and he gave them clarity. And when he left, the valley was no longer in darkness because he gave everyone clarity. So, the lesson in that example, when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, is you have to make yourself accessible to the human family, because there's a lot of us walking around right now who are in a lot of pain, who are thinking of taking our own lives. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that I haven't been there. I've been there. I've been there plenty of times. Considering my having to deal with two parents who didn't give a damn, who didn't care, and had a sister that was always manipulating environments to where things around me started crumbling. And then you leave, you build your own family, and you end up getting with a woman who is just downright evil, promiscuous, and just don't give a damn about nobody, including herself. I know what that's like. And that will make a person say, if this is my life, here, God, you can have that back. I don't want it. I wanted to address what that video said at its very end in terms of the beginning video, where it says concerning people who take their own lives, when they say, God, if this is my life, then here, you can take this back. I mean, that's primarily what's being said, even if it's not being verbally said, that's what's being implied. So, I want to share something with you that I had made a video not too long ago about when I met the comedian Carrot Top, but it wasn't a verbal video, it was like an audio video. But I want to share the experience again. I was working at the Luxor out here. And this is where the comedian Carrot Top was performing. And I used to be a porter there, someone who goes around and cleans and makes certain that the casino is well kept up in terms of cleanliness. So I was asked to go into Carrot Top's room to clean his room. And so as I was in there cleaning his room and everything, I was in there for no more than, I would say, 11 minutes. And all of a sudden, I heard someone behind me say, "Hey, what's up, bro?" And I turned around, and it was Carrot Top. And what shocked me with Carrot Top is that I had no idea that Carrot Top was such a big dude. He's about 6'2", and he was, you can tell that he's been working out a lot. He said, "Hey, bro, how you doing?" I said, "I'm good. I'm just, I said, I'll be out of your way in a minute, because you know how celebrities are." He said, "Hey, bro, take your time. Don't worry about it." And so in his private quarters inside of the casino, of where he would go to prepare himself for his shows, and not his primarily hotel room, he had a whole bunch of alcohol stacked up, all different types of liquor. And he had a big black leather couch in front of it. And so I think he got some Jack Daniels, and he said, "Hey, bro, you want some?" And I looked at him. I said, "No, bro, me and Jack don't get along." And we both started laughing, and so I went back to cleaning. And it hit me because this was right around the time that Robin Williams had committed suicide. And so by him being a comedian and by Carrot Top being a comedian, I was curious. And so I asked Carrot Top, I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, "Go ahead, bro." I said, "What do you think about this Robin Williams thing with him taking his own life?" And he looked at me like this, and he said, "Do me a favor, bro." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Go close the door." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went and closed the door because we, technically, whenever we clean a celebrity's room, we're supposed to leave the door open. And so he said, don't worry about it." So I went and I closed the door. And after I closed the door, he pointed to the other couch right across from me. He said, sit down. He said, "Let's talk." He said, "You want to know what happened to Robin Williams?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "The people stopped laughing." He said, "To a comedian, laughter is what water or oxygen is to a fish." He said, "When we hear people laughing," he said, "that's our breath of life." He said, "It's our oxygen." He said, "Without that, we don't survive." He said, "I'm not saying financially." He said, "Internally, we need laughter so that we can breathe." He said, "What happened to Robin Williams?" He said, "The people stopped laughing." And I said, "That's profound." He said, "It's the truth." He said, Robin Williams fell into depression because he wasn't getting any more work. He said, if you look at the two last movies that he made, he said the two last movies that he made was What Dreams May Come. He said, and What Dreams May Come was a movie about a man who lost his kids, who was currently married, and he got into an accident and got himself killed. And who was left from his family was his wife, who couldn't withstand losing her family, so she took her own life. He said so. And the movie after that, he said the very last movie that Robin Williams made was The Most Angry Man in the World. He said, in collaboration of those movies, he said, I found it very enlightening in terms of where his mind state was. I said, what do you mean? He said, during the fact that he was depressed because people wasn't laughing anymore. He said, due to the fact that the people wasn't laughing anymore, he said it was almost like he lost his children. He lost his family. He said, because we need people to laugh to keep us going. And he said the fact that people wasn't laughing at his comedy anymore, he felt like he lost his family. He said, so the next movie after that, which dealt with his wife taking her own life because she lost her family, he said, it explained to me exactly why he chose those movies in that order. Now, the audio that I made of this conversation doesn't explain any of this, but it's just that as I'm making the video, a lot of what he said and what we talked about is returning, and I'm going somewhere with this, so hear me out for a second. So he said, when the people stop laughing, the comedian no longer has anything to feed on. The comedian can't breathe if the people are not laughing. He said, you see my act, bro? He said, most of my act attracts elderly people. He said, I have to have those beautiful women on stage with me in bikinis just so I can accumulate an audience of older people and middle-aged people. He said, so most of my act is what they used to call stick back in the days of Brother Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. It's called stick, little props, because he uses a whole lot of props for his act. And he said, you've seen my act, haven't you? And even though I didn't, I told him, yes, I did. Yeah, I saw your act. I saw your show. And the reason why sometimes you have to think before you answer because you don't want to offend anyone. So I told him, yes, I saw your act. I didn't want to say, no, I haven't seen it. Because to a comedian, that's a bit offensive. That's a bit offensive. I only bring that up is because I met Jimmy Walker, the guy who played JJ in Good Times. Jimmy Walker lives here. And one night I was going home from work and I stopped at the Smith store. And lo and behold, Jimmy Walker was grocery shopping. And I came up to him. I said, Jimmy Walker. And I put my hand out. And he hesitated. And then he shook my hand. He said, how you doing? I said, I'm good, man. I said, it's blessed to see you. He said, thank you. I appreciate that. But I got away with him because I remember he hesitated. So I wanted him to feel safe because it was like 2:15 in the morning. I wanted him to feel safe. So we was in the line checking out and Jimmy Walker was in front of me. And so he checked out before I did. And due to the fact that I had just a couple of items, as he was leaving, walking towards his vehicle, I wasn't that far from him. And I said, you have a good night, bro. And he said, thank you. I said, do you still perform out here? He said, yes. I'm performing at the Atlantic. And I'm like, damn, why did I ask him that? Because to a comedian, you're supposed to know that they're performing. How can you recognize who this is, but you still don't know that he's still in activation of his craft? He said, yeah, I'm performing at the Atlantic. I said, okay, man, I appreciate that. And I left. So that's the reason why I told Carrot Top I've seen his show, even though I didn't, because I didn't want to offend him. But he said, you've seen my show, haven't you, bro? I'm like, yeah, I seen it. He said, my show attracts older people and middle-aged people, and I have those women on stage with me, as I said before. He said, but what's going to happen to me when those older generations die off? And he said, and those people who are middle adults right now find my act less attractive. He said, what's going to happen to me when people stop laughing? And Carrot Top has had extensive surgery on his face to where he looks kind of, I'm just going to say it, he looks kind of startling when you meet him in person, because he had a lot of surgery done on his face. And he said, look at my face, bro. He said, I've had all of this extensive surgery on my face. He said, who's going to hire me looking like this? He said, so what I'm doing right now, he said, I'm working with other people to try to help them with their careers. I'm helping future comedians come up. He said, I'm keeping myself busy within my craft. He said, so that when the people stop laughing, I can still breathe. You know, and that was very enlightening to me. That was very enlightening. The reason why I explain all of that is because when a lot of people, in terms of Ashlee, Jenae was saying, when her post said, suicide is never the answer. And a lot of people didn't catch that because she wasn't talking about a particular person outside of herself. She was talking about something that she had came to realize, which implies, I got from that she was talking about herself. So she had went through something to where she fell into a deep depression, and either she came to realize herself that taking her own life wasn't the answer, or she had someone in her life that was accessible to help her realize that. So that's the reason why I was saying, how do you know she wasn't talking about herself? And I had explained that some people are in a real happy mood before they take their own lives. And the reason why that is so is because they're no longer struggling if they should do it or not. They've made up their mind that they're going to take their lives. And in their mind being made up, they have found clarity to all of the profound conflicts that they had sitting up inside. And therefore they are no longer in conflict. They're no longer. They've made up their mind that they're going to take their own life. And so due to the fact that they have made their own mind up, they develop a sense of joy and bliss And so they're thinking pretty soon all of this suffering is going to be over and I am in power to end it myself. And a lot of people are left with their feelings and their thoughts because they don't have enough people in their life that care about how they're thinking and how they're feeling. And some people make themselves inaccessible because of their personalities, in which makes people feel as though they are not approachable when it comes to certain issues, internal issues with what's going on with them. This is one of the reasons why I make certain that I maintain a personality to where I am approachable by not only the people in my life who I love, but just people in general. Because you never know what's going on with people. You could actually stand at a bus stop like I did in the mid-90s and have a conversation with someone who was thinking about going home shooting their wife. And this actually happened. And I was talking to this guy, he was ready to go home and kill his wife. And I basically told him that she's not the problem, you are. And he said, how am I the problem? By the way she's tripping. I said, because you're the problem because of the way that you're responding. I said, so why throw your life away when you can just file a divorce? I said, everything in our life that happens in our life is all about how we choose to respond to it other than reacting to it. I said, you have to choose to respond to it. I said, because believe me, bro, you ain't trying to throw your life away. You ain't trying to sit in no prison cell for the rest of your life. Are you an animal? And he told me, no, I'm not an animal. I said, well, then don't talk to me like you're going to be an animal and go home and kill somebody that you still love. He said, how do you know that I still love her? I said, because you're upset because of the way she is and you wish that she was another way. And you know that there's a very good possibility that she can become the woman that you desire her to be. I said, so if you love her enough to help her, then help her. You don't want to kill her. You don't want to kill her because you love her. You just want her to stop tripping. I said, but if you're tripping more than she is and you're thinking about killing her, who's the problem, bro? It's you. It's not the devil. It is always us. It is always us. It is us. Whatever conscious decision that we make in spite of what people say or do or what transpires in the environment, our conscious decisions are our own. And it all boils down to one thing. Do you love yourself? Do you love your life enough not to do anything that's going to cause you to spend the rest of your life in a prison cell? People who commit crimes, fatal crimes, so where they are going to be sitting in a prison cell for the rest of their days, they don't love their life because if they really love themselves and if they really love their life, they wouldn't commit those type of acts. So the point that I'm making is that the reason why that it is a possibility that she did this to herself is because when I read that, the way that she wrote that, she didn't write it in a way to where she was talking about someone outside of herself. And so here she is, she's on Instagram and she's fabricating this life that she's having with her fiance. I hear a whole lot of media formats address him as her husband. That wasn't her husband, that was her fiance. And so by the way that she propagated this so much and she just threw it up in everybody's face, how would she have felt as if her oxygen was suddenly cut off by this huge argument that they had when they got there from the beginning all the way to the end? And as I said before, now if they were arguing from day one when they got there, where did this video come from? because it looked like they were getting along fine to me. This is one of the reasons why I was saying she fabricated her entire life. The whole thing was fabricated. The whole video was Al, and a whole lot of you black women, it wasn't Al, it wasn't Al, it was Al. All right? The whole thing is that you don't want to accept that it was Al because you wish that you were her, because you believe this to be real. You want this to be real so much because you want that for yourself. But it was fabricated. It was all Al. Because I've seen other videos of women utilizing the same Al, feeding giraffes and all. And if you don't believe me, Google it, baby. It's a fact. That was all Al. It was all fabrication of her saying, look, I got the life. I'm with my white man, and I'm over here in Africa, the motherland, and I got it made. I'm here and you're not. Thumbing her nose up at black men all at the same time and telling black women, you can have this, because that's what she was promoting anyway. And she had that general platform of propagating and trying to encourage black women to go in the direction of black men based upon her bad experiences with black men. And then when she got over there and everything that transpired with in opposition of what she propagated, she knew that if this doesn't work out, how am I going to explain this to everyone? So due to the fact that she knows how vicious the internet can get, she couldn't take it. This is just my vantage point. And this is why I say there's a possibility that she might have did this herself in order to avoid having to face the onslaught of people on this internet that was going to eventually end up telling her, I told you so. That's just my vantage point. I'm not saying that she did it, but I'm just saying maybe there's a possibility that she did. There's a possibility that she did. And so when you get to the point to where your whole lifestyle that you're propagating is an illusion and a lie, when reality hits, reality clashes against the illusion, and reality is going to always win. That's like you shouldn't have any images of yourself in your mind or images of anyone else, these ideas of how you want a woman to be or how you want a man to be. Because sometimes you can deceive yourself. You should move forward and accept reality for what it is and don't have any images in your mind of how things are going to go or how things should be. Because once you move forward and you see that the reality doesn't go in harmony with these images that you had in your mind, it's going to serve a whole bunch of conflict. And there's no telling how you're going to respond when you're under an immense conflict in terms of being shocked and disappointed, and all of that is ruled by fear. How am I going to explain this to everybody? I put all this stuff out here. How am I going to explain this now? So this is one of the reasons why I said that there is a possibility that she did this to herself. A possibility. I'm not saying that she actually did. We have to look at all sides, all sides. And now there's some things coming out about her other Instagram page, to where a whole lot of pictures and everything on there was talking about her life in Florida as a stripper. And I'm not surprised. But if she was a stripper, did she deserve what happened to her? Nope. Whether she did it to herself or not. Redemption is for everyone. So my thoughts and prayers goes out to her family, and I hope that this comes to surface. And the reason why I say that is because there's a very big possibility that since her body is back in America, that's going to pretty much be the end of it. And you're just going to be left with wondering. And don't be sitting around here pretending like America has never left you in darkness in terms of wondering if anything happened or not. We still don't know exactly who killed Brother Malcolm X or Dr. King. I mean, it's still things that we're wondering about. The only thing they have to do is just stop talking about it. Because if you stop talking about it, then people will stop thinking about it. And as long as people stop thinking about it, it won't thinking about it and talking about it, then it'll eventually go away with time, because time has an element in there that erases memory a bit. So let's just hope that doesn't happen. And as I said before, my thoughts and prayers goes out to her family in terms of finding peace any way that they can in order to be able to deal with this effectively. And if there's any more questions needed to be asking for the sister, Verna Jennings, who has always sent me very kind and beautifully written emails, I'm hoping that this answered all of your questions. If not, just, give me a call, and I'll explain it to you. But hopefully this did. So everyone have a good night. And we'll stay human.